This One's Wife. Brutal Snub. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. How is it that certain people make their way to the rarefied atmosphere of fame and wealth? Well, for some, it's achieved as a consequence of accident of birth, that they inherit wealth, prestige and status. The endeavours or position of their forebears is passed on to them, and irrespective of whether they're a decent human being, particularly industrious, especially smart, or an out-and-out douche canoe, the abilities of their forebears, whether it was based on talent, nous, commercial savviness, or being very good at shafting other people, they ultimately benefit from it, having done nothing to actually merit it themselves. Alternatively, there are those that get there as a consequence of talent. There are plenty of talented people who never make it big, but there are plenty also that do get there, whether it's as a consequence of sporting prowess, invention, the creation of brilliant television or film, writing magnificent literature, creating fantastic art. Whatever the talent might be, they have it in spades, and the application of that, perhaps with some judicious marketing also, results in them getting into that rarefied atmosphere. But it's based on something tangible. Talent. Then there are those that get there as a consequence of sheer likability. They may not be the best at what they do, but they're an affable individual that has worked hard, and by plugging away and not putting too many noses out of joint, they found themselves benefiting from their general likability and hard work. There are others that achieve it through infamy, that as a consequence of undertaking something or behaving in a particular way which is reprehensible, nevertheless, their infamy brings them recognition which they're able to leverage. And then we come to others who basically get to the position that they do off the hard work of somebody else, not an inheritance situation, but marriage. And that is where we find ourselves with This One's Wife. An untalented, mediocre actress with no charisma, an awful personality, but became known around the globe and able to access wealth and networks simply because of the doofus that she managed to ensnare through marriage. Thereafter, she has sought to elevate herself, not with sprigs of mint, but by clambering onto those individuals that are above her in the pecking order by believing that she belongs. By trying to get hold of those that have worked hard, that have got talent, that have demonstrated ability, that are likeable. This One's Wife has sought to piggyback her way to continued fame and wealth. However, many of those individuals saw through her rather quickly, and either did not engage with her, or if they did, they soon left her behind. They realised that she's a talented nobody who is only known because of the fact that she married Prince Harry, that she's grasping, unpleasant, and they've no need to be tainted by association. Accordingly, if you look at all of those that are above her in the talent and likability stakes, they stay away from her. Instead, it tends now to be the case that those are the ones that bother with her would be regarded as below her in terms of status, wealth, or fame. So, for instance, we have seen in the case of the forthcoming episodes of With Love, Meghan, crying makeup man Daniel Martin has reappeared. He isn't somebody who's particularly famous, but that's all that This One's Wife can attract with regard to going on her show. And another example of how This One's Wife has been seen through by those that are in effect her betters, i.e. those individuals are far more likeable and far more talented than her, comes courtesy of Phoebe Tonks writing in the Express that tells us Mariah Carey has emerged as the newest celebrity to deliver a cold shoulder to This One's Wife after she deliberately overlooked her encounter with the Duchess during a recent Hits Radio interview about her royal connections prior to her upcoming performance at King Charles's Sandringham House. The 56-year-old music icon notably interacted with This One's Wife in 2022 when she appeared on the Archetypes podcast. See Parts Passim for my detailed breakdown of that interaction between two narcissists. However, when directly questioned about meeting any royals this week, Rather than mentioning the Duchess of Sussex, Mariah delivered a stinging snub by instead referencing her meeting with Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, whom she warmly called cool. Despite this one's wife and her spouse, Prince of Pink Pancakes, withdrawing from their roles as working royals in 2020, the couple still maintains royal status as royal family members, making the exclusion particularly striking. Nevertheless, Mariah Carey's choice to skip mentioning the Duchess might also trace back to their uncomfortable interaction archetypes in 2022, when she labelled this one's wife a diva, though she was swift to explain that this wasn't meant negatively, although of course it was. The duo had discussed the complexities surrounding the word diva and explored its unfavourable associations before Carey called the Duchess a diva herself. Noting that the characterisation related to this one's wife's bearing attire and gorgeous ensembles, she maintained that it wasn't a critique of her character, yet the conversation remained uncomfortably tense regardless. You recall, of course, that this one's wife then had to sneak back into the studio at a later juncture because she addressed the situation by stating, "My fangirling was tempered today. I kind of think she could tell. But that aside, it was all going swimmingly really well until that moment happened, which I don't know about you, but it stopped me in my tracks when she called me a diva. You couldn't see me, obviously, but I started to sweat a little bit and started squirming in my chair in this quiet revolt, like, wait, no, what? How could you? That's not true. Why would you say that?" My mind was genuinely just spinning with what nonsense she must have read or clicked on to make her say that. And I just kept thinking in that moment, was my girl crush coming to a quick demise? Does she actually not see me? So she must have felt my nervous laughter, and you would have all heard it too, and she jumped straight in to make sure I was crystal clear when she said diva. She was talking about the way that I dress, the posture, the clothing, the quote-unquote fabulousness as she sees it. She meant diva as a compliment, but I heard it as a dig. I heard it as the word diva as I think of it, but in that moment as she explained it to me, she meant it as chic, as aspirational, and how one very charged word can mean something different for each of us. It's mind-blowing to me. Naturally, Mariah Carey did mean it in the sense of devaluing her as one narcissist asserting control over the other, but it rattled this one's wife as a threat to control so much that she had to do an additional recording to explain to everybody that although she called me a diva, she meant it in a nice way, because naturally that threat to control has to be dealt with by this one's wife. But even this exchange hasn't remained in the mind of Mariah Carey. It's compartmentalised and cast adrift. For when she's asked about royals, she just mentions the Duchess of York. This one's wife, even though it was only 3 years ago, isn't brought to the fore, isn't mentioned. This is because Mariah Carey isn't thinking about her, and nor does she want to. She regards her as beneath her, and accurately so, for at least Mariah Carey, narcissist that she is, actually has some talent, unlike this one's wife. And the result, once again, for this one's wife is another snub by someone that she at least claims to look up to and admire. Of course, we know she doesn't really look up to anybody. The only person she admires is herself in the mirror regularly. But it is entertaining to identify once again how so many people who are beyond her, better than her, more likeable than her, or more talented than her, see straight through her and demote her to the position of persona non grata. Another snub delivered to this one's wife, because at the end of the day, she's a talent-free nobody, unlikable, unpleasant, and on her way down. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.